Gentlemen, welcome to the Tim Moen Show. Wherever you are, thank you for being here. I've got a good show today. I think you know what? Every now and then I scroll through Twitter and my feelings get hurt. I'm really touchy about this subject. As the former leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada, as a guy who cashed in his retirement pension, killed his career to try to advance liberty. I don't know. It hurts my feelings whenever I see a libertarian supporting the People's Party of Canada instead of the Libertarian Party. I know it's me here. I know that it's personal. Maybe I'm taking it too personal. But I saw one libertarian on Twitter trying to convince people to support the PPC. And so I reached out to him. I want to have a chat with this guy. So welcome to the podcast, Zach Schmidt of Schmidt House Podcast. Zach, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Tim, how's it going?
Good. All right. I know I shouldn't take this personally. I know there's nothing personal when it comes to politics. And I'm here to be convinced. But before we even get to that, I want to know a little bit more about you. First of all, where are you?
So I live in a small town in Saskatchewan, and I've lived in Saskatchewan my entire life. So I'm a Western separatist first before any type of thing federal. I think that's where politics has to start, is the local level. So and that's where I think lots of these libertarian ideas, at least kind of are instilled in me, is trying to work local first rather than looking for a federal solution.
Yeah, absolutely. What you describe yourself as a libertarian, I think, in your Twitter somewhere.
I describe myself as an anarchist.
As an anarchist.
Yeah.
So you're a very consistent libertarian then.
Yes.
So you're cut from the same cloth as me. I'm an anarchist as well. I would consider myself an anarchist. I don't think there's anything the government does that free people can't do better.
Absolutely.
What was your come to liberty moment then? I guess, like, were you born an anarchist? Were you
no, it was
parents anarchists, or what?
It was forged through I think lots of watching Alex Jones. First of all, when I was about 15 years old, 14, 15, I started looking into 9/11 and came across Alex Jones and just came to the conclusion at that point that the government is fairly corrupt in all of their actions. And through conversations with family and friends and kind of just going through even post-secondary education at U of R, there's things that I kept on looking towards that I wasn't finding the right answers to. And that kind of led me down the anarchist path, is where I was trying to justify the philosophy of why people trust the state so much after after years and years of evidence of the state being corrupt and intentionally screwing people over to their own benefit. And that's pretty much where it started. And then it was reading people such as Emmett Goldman and Ayn Rand, and my new favorite in the last couple of years, Michael Malice, where it's like I was really able to solidify my ideas of the abolishment of the state. Because I don't feel that, especially at a macro level, when we're looking at the way that we pursue governance, I don't think that there's any leaders or people that you can actually seek out as far as a leader to be able to actually provide you the life and the liberty that you want and deserve as an individual.
Right. And I mean, the very structure of the state itself, or the idea of it, is, it's definitionally essentially a criminal cartel, a criminal gang aspiring it to infringe your rights, to live off you, to plunder. They're for plunder and conquest. That's sustain themselves. And so to imagine that a very virtuous and stand-up person is going to take a cartel and make it what? Cartel? Well, then it wouldn't even cease. It would cease to exist anymore, right? So, so we're with you. Okay, so what then is your kind of view on how we can achieve more liberty, in the future?
Well, as far as it pertains to Canada, and I think this will kind of be a little bit of a segue into a conversation that we had on Twitter, is as an anarchist, I'm looking at how I can achieve that level of governance, or that philosophy of governance is maybe a better way to put it. And I don't want to impose my will upon anybody just as much as I don't want their will imposed upon me. So I've been looking, I never voted up until 2021. And I've really been looking at how other people view the system And I'm like, I can't impose this upon other people. I can't impose anarchy on other people. But other people want to play in this political sphere. And what's going to be the best way to be able to get Canada to a point to where we're edging towards what I want? And I think the first step in that plan, as far as sovereignty and freedom goes at a federal level, is the People's Party. And you see so much back and forth between even, say, the Conservatives or even like the Liberal NDP coalition. And what we're seeing is that nobody's having the right conversations. Nobody is pushing the needle to go back towards the right side of the equation, right? And that's where I feel that the People's Party is able to push that needle, because there's a ratcheting effect with the Conservatives, and that's just the way that leftist policy goes. Is there's a shift left, and the Republicans down in the States and the Conservatives up here think it's a win by not giving them everything that they want. They view that as a win, not saying that this is where we plant our flag and this is what we want, and we're not going to accept anything that's left of that, right? So I think that that's the conundrum that we're in politically here in Canada. And that's why I support the People's Party, is because they're actually having the conversations to kind of swing it back right, avoid that ratcheting effect, and then we can talk about something that is more libertarian, more anarchy based once we kind of achieve that. But we can't do that until it hits critical mass. And I feel that the People's Party is the driver.
It's the correct operation of things is deal with what's in front of us first, and then kind of go. How do you make sense of aren't you worried, for example, that Bernier is watering the seed of statism as he's hacking at the branches of evil emerge from that thing? So let me give you an example. I mean, believe I've felt like Bernie was a libertarian a long time. I don't know if you watched that episode where I kind of laid out.
I did, yeah,
our history together. And me courting him, and like I could never understand why he wouldn't want to lead the Libertarian Party. He's a libertarian, why not lead the Libertarian Party? And I think he made his answer clear, like, I'm not a libertarian, and he's called his party a true conservative Party over again. But my concern with that is that because he's willing to use state to make it more he wants to make this more conservative, right? So, control the boards, regulate drugs, maybe ban things like drag queen story hour, have churn the conversation to, like, what are we teaching in schools, what's happening in public places, let's make those spaces more conservative. Now, as a libertarian or anarchist, I want to say, well, why do we have those goddamn places to begin with? Why are we asking this entity that has from which this debaucherous kind of deviant leftism has emerged? Why can we imagine that thing's going to turn it around suddenly and fight leftism when it is kind of the root of leftism in a lot of ways? And how can we nurture that and then it also expect to kind of fight incrementally, bring us towards a liberty?
I mean, it's a fair point, and that would be my criticism of any political party. It doesn't matter which stripe you're cut from, even the Libertarian Party, because there's always the problem is when people seek power, the power ends up corrupting them. And I'm not saying that Maxime Bernier is going to be invincible to that by any stretch of the matter. But I just feel that, like, when we're looking at which is going to get us in a more free opportunity at a federal level, that's where I think the People's Party is. Because if you see what the Conservative Party, who says that they're fighting for such things and trying to move that needle, they're agreeing with the Liberals every step of the way. So I really feel that if someone's looking at things pragmatically, of how can we actually achieve certain things federally, that's where I'm more or less trying to convince people that saying, hey, let's wake up to the fact that the Conservatives are just as bad as the Liberals are. And once we sort those kind of concepts out, then we can take a point and move the target towards government as a whole. And, the conversations that I've had with Maxime Bernier and other people within the People's Party, there's more people that think of the libertarian mindset. And that's why I actually think that so many people ignore the up-down aspect, the y-axis of the political compass. And I think that the People's Party is, as far as like a driving force, more libertarian than it actually is conservative. I think maybe Max got tripped up early on in wanting to maybe replace the conservative values. And that might be stem from a little bit of the disagreement between you two when you were going back and forth and maybe bringing him into your party and having him take it over, because he wanted to have that conservative voice. We have the exact same problem going on here At a provincial level here in Saskatchewan, we have a brand new party, the Sask United Party, that is basically trying to become the new Conservative Party. And it's like, I know people within that party that are saying, I don't like that branding, when they're trying to take that name Conservative back, because what we're actually looking for is the libertarian principles.
Yeah, I mean, it's anti-state, right? That seems to me like we're in an existential crisis, and I kind of get the argument of incrementalism, like we need to move people along kind of at a slow and steady pace. To me, it empirically seems that hasn't worked. That's never worked. And what's working for the left right is just straight out radicalism.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to see radicalism from Jagmeet Singh and Trudeau. See it from the fringe parties, from the intellectuals in the left basis, from mouthpieces who aren't afraid to spout their radicalism and their radical agenda. They kind of pave the way and create the Overton window. But one of the things I can really see from the right is this unwillingness to I mean, and I think it kind of goes hand in hand with being a conservative, right? I mean, you kind of want to maintain the status. You don't want to be radical. You want to just kind of like, maybe if we could just go back 10 years, things would be much better, or go back policies 15 years ago or something like that. So I think maybe it's something in the political or in the conservative personality where they are a little bit more restrained and want to be a little bit more appropriate, proper, or something like that. But what I think what is really missing is that radical voice for liberty, right? I mean, what I was really hoping to see from Bernier, who flamed out of the conservative, was like go hard against this, but instead he went hard immigrants and multiculturalism or something like that. Like, we'd come out and talk about abolishing the central bank, taxation, theft, legalize everything, decentralize government. Like, there's so many ways you could have burned those bridges, which is with the CP and flamed out, other than in this kind of weak, like incremental stuff of, everyone can see like mass immigration is a problem, and the debauchery that's going on, but no one's addressing the root of the problem. Like, if I were a slave plantation owner, and I would to avoid people noticing that they were on a slave plantation, what I might do is invite some drag queens to speak at on the slave library or something like that. Get slaves fight with each other about whether that minority or that deviant minority should be sending children, and instead of noticing that they're on a goddamn plantation and they're being farmed as human livestock. Know what I mean? Like,
yeah, like, you're gonna get no disagreement from me on that front. Like, and that's where I just feel it's like right now, especially, which is really weird considering we're in the age of information. Then you think that this stuff would be so out there that it'd be easy for people to understand and to grasp, but the vast majority of people, especially in Canada, want those socialist policies because they think that that's how that they're going to get, maybe from their perspective, more free, or they're going to get more, say, ownership because they're paying taxes and they're getting things for that, right? They don't understand lots of these concepts. And one thing that I've been really seeing is a big problem is with that Overton window shifting so far left. Even a liberal policy from the 90s sounds radically right now, and people haven't explored these ideas. They're not willing to engage. We have mass censorship, which is basically making it very difficult for us to actually have conversations such as this to be able to spread these ideas. I think for all the PPC's faults, which there are many, and I have pointed some of them out: gun control, I don't think they're hard enough on immigration, not wanting to review the charter. These are all conversations I've had with Max multiple times, and they don't even seek my level of, say, radicalness as far as being right leaning. But I mean,
and they won't even touch drug policy, right? I mean, I remember I have to remember his name. He was there was a couple of guys who were close to that, and spent a lot of time creating a very moderate cannabis policy that would have shifted away from the conservative kind of, or the little cronyist mentality, or folk with their drug policy towards a more conservative, decentralized, free market approach. And it was rejected out of hand because doesn't want to go there, I assume.
Yeah, and that's what I mean is, like, while the conservatives right now are shifting left and trying to pander to those, say, people in the GTA that Trudeau's been bringing in and promising things, they have to go along with that to be able to get the votes that they need down east. Whereas like as far as the People's Party's perspective, I would say that they're trying to have just like a middle of the road populist party policy that will bring people that are, say, the more centrist, non-voter, people that aren't kind of swayed by one single issue. The People's Party has tons of things so that they can get them under the banner of populism, drive those ideas forward. And that's where, again, maybe then it is being able to shift those people towards the libertarian side of it, where we're actually going to have those tough conversations. And again, talking to enough People's Party candidate supporters and stuff like that, they're more of the libertarian than they are conservative whatsoever. And there's people that are ex-NDP, ex-liberal,
And
ex-Greens
it's
that are
not
all in that party
just
too.
go out and say taxation is theft, that they want to be a little bit more less radical, that they don't say join the Libertarian Party and run as candidates there and preach the libertarian message. Or
I mean, they very well could, if those people are doing it. And not to steal the arguments of criticisms by the conservatives towards the People's Party, but the libertarians don't have any teeth. The
yeah,
amount of
well,
votes
no,
that
no,
they
no one
got.
is. They want to go with what's easy or popular or something,
Well,
right? I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah, you get.
Bernier's, he spent how many in Parliament collecting a pen or building up his pension, and now he's in a really good spot to do a lot of work out there on the road and
Yeah.
lead the party, right? And I think a lot of people in join a political party, I expect more so for when they see that the leader is able to do they don't necessarily want to have to do the work themselves, something like that, or would that be fair?
Yeah, I mean, those who need leaders are rarely qualified to choose them. That base is
Right.
basically the whole political system is acknowledgement of that fact, because the way that the leaders and the parties all try to pander for votes and do certain things, they know that that's where the power is. The power is in the low information voter. Okay.
Right.
And that's where the left and the conservatives, as being part of the left, have been able to capitalize on that so much for so long. That's why we've only had the blue and the red team. That's it. Nobody's taken a serious look at anything else other than basically the support mechanism being the Bloc and the New Democrats. So looking at the People's Party, that's why I think it's going to be at least a fair enough opportunity, if given the appropriate amount of time and nurturing, for people to come around to more libertarian ideas via the People's Party of Canada. And like I said,
Mm.
it doesn't hit all of the marks for me. I would love to see Max, and I've told him and our Western Lieutenant Kelly Lorenz here, we need basically the Second Amendment, and the party needs to stand towards as close as getting that, because nobody's advocating for anything such as that. And that's a very, very important conversation to be had. I know that the immigration is a huge topic. The conservatives are matching the liberals on policy on that. Max is saying we want 150,000 of hardworking, vetted people that are going to come and actually work, not be a drag on the system. So incremental changes like this that I feel tons of people could get behind, your average everyday Canadian could get behind, all reside in the People's Party. And it's just trying to shift that mentality. And then it's getting a seat at the table talking about these ideas. And then the next election, maybe making government or something like that. And then the libertarian can come in and say, hey, we want something a little bit more, say, radical, right-leaning policy.
Are you familiar with the history of Conservative Party and the Foreign Party days?
It was a little bit before my time, but yes, I'm a little bit aware
I mean,
of it.
this is my worry is that the same thing happened. The Reform Party is going to end up happening with People's Party, right? The Reform Party some momentum. They were a populist party pushing back against the establishment. They kind of split the conservative base into two, right? There was kind of progressive conservative base that were more trist, and then there's these populist pushing trying to push the window right. And then they have to make a choice, right? Is about pushing the open window right, or is it about actually defeating the left and winning a seat and winning government? And at that point, it's all about winning a seat. Now we have to make some compromises with the centrists, and we have to pull back on our populist message. And libertarians kept holding out hope that time, right? I mean, Stephen Harper was friendly to libertarians when he led the merge, the Conservative Party. And it was not years later at the Manning convention where he basically talked about how we need to pull libertarians from the Conservative Party, and this and that, and how libertarians are getting in the way, and libertarians are all getting in the way of pragmatism, right? And I'm hearing from you is a little seed of that as well. It's like, okay, we can't go hard in the paint liberty right now. That's going to get in the way of us getting liberty, because it's going to turn people off. People aren't going to want to be attracted to that or like that. So I'm worried a little bit that going to turn into another reform party, and if the People's Party of Canada starts gaining action, it have to make a decision at some point whether it wants to seriously form government or whether it wants to continue to advance the Overton window. And what I'm hearing from you is your hope with this people's that it shifts the Overton window in a more positive direction. And I'm not sure. Do you think that that's Max's goal? Do you think it's all about in the conversation, or is he for an actual seat?
Well, I think if you've been watching Maxime Bernier for any point in time, even as early as when he was first running as a conservative, I think back in 2006, he's had a consistent message from the get-go. All of the stuff that he was talking about, that apart from maybe fair criticism, is him not doing research on things such as Bill C-11, towing the party line for lots of the things that he's now against, signing on to certain bills that are in hindsight of a globalist nature. I think those are fair criticism, but again, there's conservatives right now that are still doing that. So, but if you check his message since when he first ran as a conservative up until today, it's the same consistent message. Just removing some elements that haven't really stood the test of time. Whereas, even conservatives and liberals and everything that the establishment has been saying, they've pretty much reneged on. If you look at the way that Aaron O'Toole operated the party once he became leader, it's his leadership campaign and his party policy are complete opposites, right? So the establishment is going to continue to do that, and I think that if Max can shift the Overton window by even having 15 candidates in the House of Commons, I think that's a positive. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the first goal of every politician is to get elected, and then the second goal is to get reelected. So it's no mystery that the People's Party isn't immune to that. Yeah. But if you look at the message through COVID, especially over the last 3 years, Max was there during the trucker protest. He was getting arrested at rallies. He was doing all of the right things that a leader should be doing to get us through, as far as not just stroking the media narrative. And I think that when people come around to actually seeing the message that Pierre Poilievre is going to put forth when he finally does release his platform come next election or whenever it is, people are going to say, this is not what I voted for when he said that he was going to fight XYZ. And then they're going to look side by side at the People's Party that have been doing it consistently since inception. That's going to speak volumes upon people. And again, if it's 15 people in the House of Commons that are making a stink and that gets people onto the Liberty train, I'm all for it, but you're not going to see that by the establishment. So the only other option at that point is what? Revolt. We don't really have the means to do that. We're not even united enough to have a discussion about lots of these ideas. It's people like you and me that are able to push this conversation forward. But your average everyday person, if you're to walk up and say, hey, I'm an anarchist, they're going to think that you're going to throw a Molotov cocktail at their head, right? That's the state of affairs of the ignorance of not just Canadians, but kind of the people in general, is you can't just outright say, here's a good idea, because then their first response is, well, who's going to pay for the roads, right? We're stuck in this socialist hellhole and unwilling to actually have conversations that are going to shift people's perspective. And it's going to take some time. It's not going to be an easy fix. I have a friend that I had on the show, Trans Splendor. I'm not sure if you follow him on Twitter, but he's got some really good political rants and he's on point with all of them. When I had him on the show, he said, my goal of voting and supporting the People's Party of Canada is not to get a seat. That's irrelevant to me. What it is important is to find a group of people that are like-minded, that that when the lights go out, where your friends are. And I think that that's another important side of the coin too, is when we're having conversations with people, and I use Twitter as an example, is when we're having conversations with people online in this fashion, is we're trying to find our like-minded individuals so that we have a militia is a bad word for it, but that's essentially what you have a militia of people that are all aligned with the same goals that can fight back against the tyranny that we have experienced and that we will experience in the future.
Yeah, well, and that's a really good point. I mean, that was one of the great things about being leader of the Libertarian Party is I traveled across Canada. Is that everywhere I left, everywhere I went, Libertarians would come out of the woodwork, and they'd point at each other and go, "There's other people that think like me around here." Well, that's so cool, and now there's pockets of people that are going to have each other's back, just like you said.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's like the power of a movement such like as Diagolon. That's one of the whole goals is getting people together, seeing their friends that were all like-minded, got absolutely shit on during Twitter or during COVID. And it's just there's a point in Canadian history where we're standing on a fork in the road. We can go the direction of individualism and helping out your neighbor and all of that stuff, or we can go this kind of quasi-fascist nationalist, post-nationalist state that we're heading down. There's people in alignment and agreement from all sorts of ways to, I guess, maybe find the solution. But going down the fork of the road to more globalism, I don't think is the answer. And there's multiple groups that are fighting against it.
Yeah. What exactly is Diagolon? I keep seeing this name.
Diagolon. So it's a meme country that is basically a giant inside joke inside of Canada. It was started by a veteran named Jeremy McKenzie, where he noticed that all of the mandates during COVID, basically from Alaska down to Florida, all had the least amount of restrictions. So Alberta, Saskatchewan, Montana, Texas, like just basically from
no line kind of thing.
Exactly down there. So it started as a joke, but it was one of the things that was the justification for invoking the Emergencies Act during last February. They cited Diagolon and a bunch of people within it, and it's just since then become a community of, again, like-minded people that are liberty focused, want to see our country taken back. And it's right now within the community of Diagolon, it's all about personal fitness and getting yourself to become the best person. It's like lots of these are the messages inside of it. But if you go to Anti-Hate's website, there's articles written about Diagolon that completely smear it and run it through the mud. But that's essentially the long and short of Diagolon.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, personal responsibility is huge, right? And I think you and I are of the same set here that there is no real political solution to this this issue. From my perspective, what we need to do is create a lot more libertarians, and whatever gets us more libertarians and more like-minded people is the best strategy, I guess we could hope for.
So, and I think it starts local. That's where this movement has to come from. If you're looking for a federal solution to any of the problems that you're having, it's not going to come. We're seeing this radical shift, and I know some of the things that are going on in the education system here in Saskatchewan, and I'm working with a couple of groups to kind of get in front of it. But realistically, this Marxist ideology has infiltrated school boards, HR departments in businesses. It's all over the place, and it's starting at a local. It's having these conversations that you and I are having right now with your family and friends, with your neighbor down the street, with your community groups, your rec boards, your all of this stuff. This is where the change is going to come from. If you think that walking into a voting booth is going to change a goddamn thing, it's not. And the level of ignorance that people just walk into a voting booth and select a color is the reason why we are where we are right now.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that's part I worry about this conversation is that like the PPC seems to be shifting the conversation to like let's go back to public schools of 20 years ago, right? When they're teaching proper things in public schools. Let's go back to government policy of 20 years ago when things were a little bit more coherent, and we let's have some freer markets. And what I worry about is that's been the conservative kind of conversation for as long as conservatives. In fact, there's some reverend, I'm trying to remember his name now. It was in Michael Malice's book that talked about how conservatism is merely the shadow that follows radicalism to push for something like that.
Yeah,
and that's my worry, right? Because public school, the very public school is kind of a Marxist thing. It needs to be abolished. It needs to be be banned. It doesn't need to be put in a conservative direction. It's impossible to do that, right? it's great that people waking up now and seeing how government is over the past years in the pandemic. I mean, I think Justin Trudeau and the authoritarians done more to create more libertarians than I or Rod Paul
Absolutely, yeah.
to do. But I mean, let's be serious. It was always bad. Income tax, 1917, central banks. I mean, we can't just go back 20 years. We have to go to the root of the problem, to the thing of the problem. This is, and so this is just my, like, here's how I see the People's Party, and here's convinced me of, and what the value of it, right? It is maybe an entryway, in the same way Alex Jones was an entryway for you to libertarianism, anarchism. I had a similar entry through kind of conspiratorial thing. It was a film by this guy named Aaron Russo called Freedom to Fascism, that talked about the income tax and how the income tax was illegal, and kind of the conspiracies that opened a door for me. Now, Aaron Russo, I think, was a little bit kind of nuts. Like, he focused on the wrong thing, just like I think Alex Jones a lot of times is kind of focused on the wrong thing. He's always looking for puppet masters. If we can just expose the puppet masters, things will be better. Well, to me, all this emerges from neighbors thinking the thoughts they have in their heads, and having the cultural ideas in that's about what government is, creating a market demand for all the craziness we see. And there are going to be opportunities to take advantage of that. But started with those people that I think are maybe focused in the wrong direction a little bit, and it led me where we're at now. And so I guess in that sense, there's a people see, like, a soft middle place for people who are on the road freedom to land. But don't we have to keep the pedal down? Don't we have to keep the People's Party honest to say, hey guys, nice job on the pandemic stuff and on this, but let's go further. Max, when you say that we don't need climate policy because there's no emergency, we say no, we don't permit at all for emergency. If there is an emergency, that's even more of a reason we don't need government. Like, let's put the hammer down here and not give an inch of the People's Party. Do you think that there's any rationale or reason to think along that lines? Like, as good as the People's Parties are, they brought us maybe 75% of the way. They don't need that Libertarian Party or maybe even an anarchist party pushing the rest with a message to keep it real.
Well, I completely agree with that. The problem is you can't do that with 4,700 voters across Canada, right? That's where and again, to kind of steal an argument from the Conservatives towards the People's Party, is like they say that there's zero chance of the People's Party even getting a seat.
Yeah.
I would, for argument's sake, say the exact same thing about the Libertarian Party, and that's where it's like the middle of the road populism is unfortunately the first baby step to incrementally get it. Like, I'm not saying that we're going to be short of having an actual insurrection style revolution here in Canada, led by these fringe libertarian anarchists that would be right leaning, because the ANCOMs wouldn't solve a thing. They just want more state. But if we're looking at from an ANCAP perspective to actually push that movement forward, we are far away from that. And that's where the middle of the road populism with the People's Party, a party that honestly every Canadian could get behind, because it's Canadian values first. And that's a very simple policy. It's probably the root of why Trump got down in the States, is because he said, make America great again, put America first, and that's it. Canada is the most resource-rich nation. All of the problems that we are having should not be because we can't get our products to market. It's because we have the government in charge that is restricting us from actually prospering. They're shutting off our oil taps here in the West. They're hitting us with fertilizer taxes, so we can't. So our food costs are going to get more. Every single problem that we're experiencing is orchestrated by our government. And the government, the Liberal government, was propped up by the Conservatives and the NDP through all of the decision making through COVID, which was probably a big red pill, I would say, for the vast majority of Canadians. It's really woke them up when there's all of a sudden the government's taking their business away, and you still have these politicians lying. Looking for a political solution isn't going to happen. But 90% of the people in Canada look for a political solution. So let's offer them something. Let's offer them the bowl of cereal and spoon feed them for a little bit. Then we can actually get them the steak dinner that is the anarchism, the libertarianism, and actually give people the freedom to have property rights, the right to liberty, the right to happiness, all of the stuff that the founding fathers in the United States and this that should have been echoed up in here from our inception of becoming a nation. Let's get that in play. And that's another thing. Another person I had on my podcast was Brenton Froelich, who wrote the True North Declaration, which is an attempt to rewrite our Constitution. Right. So there's options
I'm having
out there.
on my show here in the next week or so.
It was a great conversation. Honestly, he's very, very smart man. But that's where again, there's certain avenues that we can go down. It's just which is going to be the one that is actually going to take a spark and start a flame of liberty across the country. I think the People's Party is the best option if we're looking at it from that perspective.
Okay, well, good enough. Well, I guess to agree to disagree. But hopefully we can carry on this conversation. Hopefully, Zach,
absolutely,
I convince you and other anarchists and libertarian out there to weigh in behind radicalism. There's no point not being real and pushing 100% for liberty. That was my big thing, because I started out when I started out in the Libertarian Party. I actually my platform looked very similar to the People Party, strangely similar, but it could be that got me developed it went over to the People's Party. I think helped Max up his policy. But what I realized over time is that like pushing 15% flat tax changes the conversation in the wrong direction. It's what's a fair tax rate?
Well, I would say a fair tax rate is zero tax.
Right. It should be zero, right? And so I had this idea of stalling liberty a little bit, and I realized over time, that was the wrong way to approach it. First of all, I'm in a party that's never going to win a seat, and the goal of this party and winning a seat isn't going to get a damn thing anyways. There's absolutely nothing that came from winning a seat. To win a seat, you have to reflect culture, and to reflect culture, you have to say things that make you weak, and say things that are soft, and maybe some things that even arch. And you're chaining yourself down by the things you're saying, and you get in there, and you're going to notice very quickly that there's all sorts of institutional inertia. I see it all the time. I see it in municipal politics. I see local guys run for office because they get potholes fixed, or they want this done in town. And they very quickly run into bureaucracy that says, well, there's like 10 reasons why we can't do it that way. And I've been working here in the city's department for 30 years, and I can explain them all to you, and they make you look like an idiot real quick, and they cut the teeth from under you. And so the only thing I think that gets our liberty is awakening the population, and that only gets done by radical, like in your face, true. It doesn't have to be abrasive. It doesn't have to be aggressive, but it can't pull punches. It can't soften the pulls we're doing. That's why I
would completely agree with that. I don't think that the People's Party shift right is strong enough, to be completely honest, and that's a fair criticism of them. But again, I don't think that that's their strategy personally. Is there merit for that? Call it right, or I guess it would be, again, without ignoring the y-axis of the political compass, but that shift from those types of perspectives, you're going to have equal amount of backlash. And right now, the ones that are controlling the conversation are these radical leftists. So I agree, you need that radical right, say, to kind of balance it out. I just don't think that that's going to happen. Looking at it, even when the left and BLM and Antifa were destroying cities back in 2020, nobody said anything. Everybody bent the knee for that ideology. That's where the majority of the people are. So if you introduced, say, a radical right-wing fraction, well, those people already control the media narrative. To say that this is pushing a boulder up a mountain is an understatement for the battle that's coming ahead of us. And I completely agree. I don't want any taxes. I don't want someone ruling over and dictating my life, especially someone that's not from my province. We shouldn't have ministers from New Brunswick making decisions on what happens in Saskatchewan. That's why I'm a separatist first, right? Let's get Alberta and Saskatchewan, make our own country, leave Canada, and set it up in the right way with a real constitution that enshrines the rights for people. Again, that's a fairly radical idea that is starting to have a little bit more traction specifically here. But what does that actually look like when you're trying to carry that across Canada, where Trudeau is bringing in voters in the large centers so that he can control and strengthen his grip on our nation. You're not going to be able to have a conversation and saying that we should abolish the state, as radical as that might seem, to
But
someone that's
wait a
is
second,
coming
Zach.
here
Do you
saying
think
that
we're going to be
I
able to have
need
a
the state.
conversation about even slowing immigration?
But nobody
That's just,
mainstream wise, that's not a conversation that people even want to entertain. That's
right.
what I mean is when Trudeau's
Yeah,
bringing in voters to the GTA, they're going to vote for him because he's promising them to be able to live here for free on our dime, right? To come back and say that those people shouldn't pay any taxes and get any benefit from the government, they're going to deny you because they want that policy. That's why the
yeah,
Liberals are able to feign ignorance and basically siphon votes from the First Nations people, from the elderly, and from the immigrant population. Those are their three voting bases that are their diehards because they get the most handouts. Right? It's very hard to shift that conversation, no matter how good your argument is.
yes, yeah, I agree. Well, but I mean, you might as well put it by telling the truth. I mean, what I guess I'm confused. What is the alternative?
Sorry, what you cut out there?
No, I'm guessing, trying to figure out what the alternative is. How does the PD solve that problem?
I think by running a fairly moderate platform. Like I personally do think that they are more libertarian than conservative. I just think they do want that conservative branding to give
Right.
an alternative, you know. And that's when the conservative parties say we need to or you know, at least the pundits or the CPC bros, they say we need to unite the right. Well, they're on the left. The only uniting of the right, I would say, is maybe the People's Party and the Libertarian Party, or maybe some independents, right? If we're looking at it from that perspective on a solution that way. But taking back that conversation is going to be us right here. It's going to be you talking to your neighbor. If you think that there's going to be, especially the more that you are removed from a personal relationship with someone and offering a solution at that level, it's not going to take. Getting on town councils and city councils and school boards and having a shift in the culture that way is how we win. Breitbart said politics is downstream from culture. And I personally think that the left has been wielding politics to influence culture. We don't have that luxury, especially if you look at the way the Libertarian Party and the People's Party have done. We haven't gained traction in the political realm, even though we have the best arguments and the best policy to be able to actually save our country, get it back on track, right?
Yeah.
Is where we can do is start influencing this culture. The transgender debate right now is going to be an absolute deal breaker for a lot of people. There's going to be varying amounts of degree of how this is going to be effective depending on where you live. But myself in Saskatchewan, we're not immune to this. The Saskatchewan Party, which is a so-called conservative party, has been putting forth SOGI policies within our education system, and we're just finally kind of hitting the prefaces to where we can say, hey, this is a problem, we need to solve it. But it should have been
But
solved back in
the day,
2015.
whichever the debate you land on, we're up with more government. Either it's going to be pushing the transit down our throat, or it's regulating it away through some kind of policies that are too broad sweeping or something like that, right?
I disagree. I don't think we have to go full Florida on it. I think what DeSantis is doing, he's kind of putting a fairly good roadmap if you want to go the government route. But what I'm talking about is culture, right? I think there's a
But
lot of
it's a
power.
reinforced status culture. Like the culture wars are a distraction from the real culture war. The culture war is framed as what do you think about this weird person or trans person who's doing weird shit, and everyone focused on that and talking about, and the state is over there like rub its hands together saying,
Yeah.
either way I win, become growing, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they're doing these false flag news stories so that they can pass a bill in the background. This isn't new, but not a lot of people are aware of it. And the reason why I say that we need to take back our culture is because for the longest time we have just let the so-called useful idiots run our country. And they know what they're doing. They know that they're manipulating things, and yet the right just seems to say, I don't want to be involved in it. And for too long that happened. So my point in saying this is it's having these conversations at a small local level where you're actually involved with, say, your kids' lives. You're not just sending them off to daycare or school and assuming that they're going to come back model citizens when they're being groomed by the state, right?
Yeah.
Like it's no mystery when we're looking at that, and that's what I'm saying is if we can take back those culture on a micro level, that is going to raise people with better values, understanding of what the actual enemy is. Like, I'm not assuming that we're going to solve these problems in the next 5 years. I would say 20 to 30 would probably be more accurate, right? It's just the way that it is. It's going to take time to kind of break people's perception and the chains that they've been secured themselves to the state apparatus, and it starts at a local level. So I'm not discrediting your argument. I'm just thinking, like, we can change culture, and we've seen lots of shifts, even with what the People's Party of Canada has done, or even Diagolon. The whole Christine Anderson thing, of how Diagolon basically trolled the Conservative Party. Like, these things aren't insignificant,
Who
right?
would
They
be
do
a
have
person to have on Diagolon if I wanted to interview someone like that?
Jeremy Mackenzie. If you reach out to Derek Rant, he could probably put you in touch with him. We can talk on Twitter about that stuff after. But yeah, I would honestly say if you can get Jeremy Mackenzie on, he's the guy that if I was to actually say who should be our prime minister and can actually fix it, it'd be Jeremy. But his arguments are simple. What is Canada doing that is wrong? Objectively wrong, and let's focus on that issue. Right now we have a slew of weak men in this country that aren't willing to actually have the conversations that we are having. They're afraid to stick their neck out and say that I don't want to transition my kid, right? Now the Conservative Party supported the Liberals in making it illegal to affirm your child's gender, right? But it's those types of conversations that the government's claws are into, and we need to take back, but we can't do it without a voice. And I think that that's where strong men need to step up and start saying, this is wrong. This is what we believe in. This is my line in the sand that you do not cross. And whether that is for firearms rights, the transgender ideology, immigration, whatever the issue is, we need strong men to say, no, this is not happening anymore.
Right. Absolutely, Zach. We need strong men to stand up, and the strongest Zach should go to the Libertarian Party and keep the pedal down on liberty. We'll carry this conversation. Thank you so much. How can people follow you? Where?
Yeah, so if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Schmidt_Zach. If you want to follow my podcast, the Schmidt House podcast is available on all major platforms. I have video episodes up on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. On Rumble, I post exclusive content called Shorts, which are spicy content that would get banned from YouTube. So I do make sure that I put it on Rumble so that it's always accessible there. So follow me on Rumble, Schmidt House podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Till next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tim.